All right, welcome back. Season 2, Episode 2 of the First in Line podcast. We're super excited. Hope you guys have been liking Season 2. We're doing things a little bit different, but, give us some feedbacks in the comments down below. Today, we got a great guest. Obviously, first, before we get to our guest, we have William here.
Hello, everybody. Name's William.
Excited to be back. Nelson behind the cameras. Hopefully, you guys are enjoying the edits. That's all him. And today we have Jesus Garcia Garcia. Welcome.
Hola, hola, ¿cómo están?
Good. So we're going to start off with just like a basic question. Kind of just how you got to Minnesota, how your family got to Minnesota, and then we'll kind of probe and ask questions there in English, Spanish, completely fine.
All right, yeah, for sure. Well, thank you for having me here. I really appreciate it. I'm glad that you guys connected with me. I think I have a pretty interesting story, just like any other immigrant here in the United States. So I came at the age of 8. My parents brought me here. And it was an interesting one. I feel like a lot of people my age go through a similar situation where you're a kid, you're not told where you're gonna be going. You end up in a car and you just wake up in the United States, right? It's not that complicated. I do remember a lot of like the little things there and there. I just remember having to leave my grandma behind, which is one of the hardest things. My father had been here already for many years in California. So we had an idea of where we were going, or what we were going to do. We were supposed to only come to the United States for a year to kind of just get to know the place, according to my father, right? So that changed over time. The opportunities that we've been able to get when we came here have been tremendous. I didn't start school right away like any other student. My father wanted us to hold for a little bit just because it was too cold. I got here January of 2003. So I still remember January 6th. So Dia de Reyes.
Yeah.
That's the day, right? So I remember we came here. My uncles had like toys for us and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So it was a really nice day. It was nice seeing my father. First time you see like a cabinet full of food as well. Mm-hmm. And so yeah. Coming back a little bit more to where I come from and where my family is from originally. So I was born in Mexico, Distrito Federal. However, we were raised in Ecatepec. So Ecatepec is one of the most dangerous cities currently in Mexico, right? And we grew up there. I went to school all the way to second grade. And going back a little bit more to where my family comes from, which I think is very important, and I don't know how many people are told by their parents what they have to go through. So usually there's stories behind of what our parents had to go through. So for example, my mother had to live in a cardboard home. That's how she was raised. Every time it rained, it flooded. My father had to pick up garbage throughout almost all his childhood, sell all kinds of things in the buses. And so all of these things my father has been reminding me since I got here. I didn't have a father until, of course, every time only when he went over there and when we came to the United States. But I was always reminded that, hey, this is you. This is what's going on. Also, when I came to the United States, it was always really clear to me that I was an undocumented immigrant. And so I don't know if you guys know a lot of the stories where students go through high school and they actually don't know they're undocumented. Which to me is really like, what? Because it's an important thing when people in high school start asking you what's your status or why are you not getting a permit like everyone else, and you start asking your parents, and then now you start to notice that life is different, right? And so my father was a little bit different, including my mother. They've always reminded us, hey, you came like this is what happened. We're not allowed to be here. So you have to do things that are a little bit different. They've always told me their story as how they grew up. How my father also, when he was in California, he was a farmer, so picked up like tomatoes and all kinds of vegetables and fruits from like fields in Stockton, California. He also went through the whole years of gang-related issues. And so he went through a really tough time. My mother, growing up in Mexico, also, it got to the point where she couldn't attend school because of money. So my parents were always very good in telling us how and where we came from and how difficult their life was. Not because they wanted us to feel bad, but more like, hey, don't forget where you're coming from, right? So that's how I came to the U.S. I really hope that people understand that. And the reason I go back is because part of our history, it's our parents growing up in their where they were born and raised. So that's important, and that's how we're raised as well. So those are transferred over to us as well.
Yeah, it's important part of a history, but also I think helps dictate like our why, a big part of our why, and why we keep moving forward, why we keep doing what we're doing, striving for our goals.
I agree.
Which I think we'll definitely get to in a bit. So your dad was in California. Um, do you know how old your dad was when he came to the United States?
I think from what he told me, he was 16 years old.
16, and then you came straight to Minnesota.
I came straight to Minnesota. Yeah, my father, when he came here, it was the year of the Mistia, when any farmer got papers, right, or a green card. The only people that were able to get it was my grandpa and my two uncles. He was too young to even work in the field. So every time they would send him home sometimes because they wanted him to go to school. But let's be realistic. People their age or his age, 15, 16, they were brought here to work. And not like the jobs that we have now here. There's a lot of cleaning jobs here, which is super easy compared to being in the fields and on 110 degree outside, in California in the middle of a playing field. So, so my father grew up in a little bit in Stockton, California. So he knows a little bit of it. We do visit sometimes still my uncles. Like I said, he still to this day continues to take us to those fields so we can see like, hey, I was there, in the 110 degrees and I was picking up tomatoes, and that was like the biggest thing over there. This is another area where we live, and they're not areas like here. The worst area it used to be, right? Minneapolis, a little bit in that area. Yeah. Like that areas over there are completely different. Also, my father tells me, okay, in Mexico, we grew up right here. This last time that I went there, I went to that area, and it's like, it's bad. It's pretty high crime, low education, low income. It's just pretty bad. So it's important to understand that, that we have a pretty good life, even as an immigrant, and a different generation. The opportunities that we get are pretty dope. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, like talking about opportunities here in the United States, like it's not perfect by any means, and my parents, they're from Ecuador. I was born here, but I go and visit, the homeland, Ecuador. I call it the homeland just because, sometimes it's kind of hard to be like this. I guess they're both, homes, right? But going back, I'm just looking at like the education system over there in Ecuador and comparing it to here, and just looking at opportunities and like how people can like progress like over there compared to like here. I feel like here, we do have it good, and and a lot of people, I guess, that sometimes don't go back to like their home countries, or like that are here, forget about how good that it is here, right?
I agree.
There's people over there, I feel like in Ecuador, I'm sure in Mexico too, that would change places with a lot of people here, for the opportunities, to like get a job, and like have a roof over your head, or get some food, or just get some food, like just kind of create opportunities for yourself and to advance a little bit more in life.
I agree, and it's easy to notice. So I am a DACA recipient now, thankfully, and I went to visit back home. I went to visit I went with my grandparents here, who live in the United States, and I went with an advanced parole permit, so I was able to exit the country, and I only took it's funny that you say that, because I took $1,000, which in my opinion, I was like, oh, it's a pretty small budget compared to what people take on a vacation. It's just that at that point I wasn't very situated, and that was the money that I had, and so I sent my money over there. When I get over there, my grandfather gives me my money, and then we start going like the food places, coffee, just things that we're used to having here, right? Where you go to the store, you get a bunch of food, cookies, whatever, right? Pizza, Domino's, like all these other stuff, and then at the end of the day, you only spent like what, like not like nothing compared to here, like $50 out of like the $1,000, and you're like, whoa, I did a lot. The only difference is that people earn way less over there. So the stuff that they buy is usually more local rather than industrial, right? And so that's I learned that pretty quickly, where I was like, whoa, like if you're taking money from the United States over there, then it's pretty easy to have a cool, awesome life where you can where you can have all kinds of foods and goods, right? But when you're over there and you're working there a full-time job, where, like, for example, my cousin having to go to school and taking the train for 2 hours, and that's one way, and then 2 hours back, instead of grabbing their car and being there in 15 minutes, right? So that's one. Two, my aunt having to go to work at like 5 a.m. and then be back at 10 p.m. Monday through Saturday. And the way they earn, like 100 pesos, 200 pesos, we're talking about like $10 a day. Then you start to notice and appreciate a lot of the things that we have here. So I'm glad that you brought that up, for sure. That's something that we don't think about daily. Yeah.
And I really like how, your dad still takes you to the fields and kind of shows you, like, this is what I kind of went through to hope that you don't have to go through this. And that's kind of like reminds me a lot of, like you said, our parents always tell us like how they had it, to remind us, like, not to make, like you said, not to make us feel bad, but to kind of have us appreciate what we have. And like just my mom having to walk like a mile just to wash clothes for the family or get water. My mom having to drop out after 4th grade because the money, and we needed they needed somebody to help with the groceries, with getting a job basically. And then my dad, like, it's one of those things where you just feel like there's times where I'm like, man, if I could just give you $10 now, like way back then, like how much of a difference that would have changed your life. Like, he talks about always wanting to play with like little toy cars, and he would have the best he would get was like the bottle top of a soda can, and like just hitting it with like his brother, like on the dirt road. And it's just like, for us, it's a kid cries and we go to Target, buy him a 10 pack of toys, and it's just like such a different upbringing. But it's super important, I think, for us to see that, understand that, hear that, because I think, at least for me, like, that's a big motivator of why I want to do what I want to do, why I want to reach my goals. And so tying this back up, like, talk to me back to, we'll get to like goals, aspirations, and all the crazy stuff that you're doing nowadays. But first, I want to hear about your first time in the U.S. school, how your middle school experience was, first snowfall, things like that. What are some of those memories that come back to being the first time here?
Yeah, so first school memories, I did get injured twice. New school, you start going on a playground. Some pretty like little kid accidents back and forth. But I was always, at that moment, I don't know, when I came to the United States, there was not a lot of Hispanic people. We were like 2 in the whole school, And so what happens is that everyone's like, oh God, like the Mexican kid, the Mexican kid, and everyone's super nice to you. And the only thing that I was good at was math, right? Because math is universal. And then English, my mom would help us do like for the spelling stuff, and she would help us with a lot of that stuff. And so I was pretty good at it. And I remember that priority, learning English, right? But for feeling wise, you in the beginning, you feel like, oh, this is, when you go to the United States overall, like, oh, los güeros, or white people, right? That's not true. Like, it's all kind of ethnicities. And you start to learn that really quickly. In my school district, I went to Hale Elementary School, where we had a large portion of Hmong people, and then I went to Field, where we have a large portion of Hmong people and Black people. Again, no Mexicans. Then when I went to Richville Middle School, we had a large portion of Hispanic people. And so feelings, you feel liked, but at the same time you feel clueless about a lot of things that is going on. Teachers treat you nice, but they treat you nice more, I don't know if because they just want to be nice, or because you're a little bit different. So feelings are nice at that moment. You know, you're a kid. When you're a kid, it's hard to go through any like difficult situations, and if you do, you forget quickly because that's what kids are, right? Things change, of course, throughout time, especially during puberty when you're growing up. You know, but yeah, I think those were some of my best times coming here. Second grade through sixth grade were like definitely my best years where I really enjoy school. Um, but yeah, a lot of interesting stories that I went through. But learning English was definitely one of my priorities and the priorities of my parents at that moment. Yeah.
Nice.
So what do you right now with English and like with learning numbers, you're good at math. So how did you use that to do what you're doing now?
Definitely. So I've always loved math.
Mhm.
So I have a deep interest in science overall. My interests are really weird, and so this is something that I don't know how many people talk about this, but when I moved to Richfield Middle School, there was a lot of there was a high Hispanic population, and so I always I was always a little bit nerdy, and I've always seen myself as like a little bit nerdy. I try not like I just that's just me. I'm not trying to be someone different.
Like, how nerdy? Like, do you watch anime and stuff, or?
Not anime or any of that, but like sometimes the way I dress.
Okay.
At that point, I was still wearing like playeras de cuello and stuff like that, and people in Richfield were already like in this other phase when I came in.
Yeah, I guess I don't mean to like say that as like a disrespectful way.
Oh no, no, it's not disrespectful.
Yeah,
no.
Just for me, like because I guess that reminded me of like me when I was growing up too. I was always like nerdy and like because I was different too. Like I went to like Green Central, Richard Park, which is like South Minneapolis.
Yeah.
Like for first grade, and then I was learning English, and I became good at like English, but I was like uncomfortable at first, and then I was good at like math, like whatever that means, because like not that good, but like relatively good, like, and that's where I like me enfoqué porque like I didn't want to be different. I just want to. That's where I surrounded my world,
Yeah.
and I guess I use that like for what I do now. I don't really use it really like, but I didn't want to pursue like a major, when I went to school in like mathematics or like anything in sciences. I just did like a bachelor's like in accounting. I was like that's what I'm like good at. So I was like let's just try it. So that's what I did. But like nerdy in the way like for me like I don't know. I was like anime and stuff like that. So that's what I was saying.
Yeah, for me,
Like,
the stuff that I liked overall, when kids were doing movies, I was like museums or like some weird stuff, where I was the one really interested in like I don't know, like puzzles, stuff like that. I've always been into that kind of stuff, where I did my first Rubik Cube like when I was still like in like intermediate school, where I was like whenever kid was like doing something else, I was already with my Rubik's Cube, and just because I wanted to. That's kind of the stuff that I like. I've always had. I don't know if have you guys heard like the Grupo Maná? Maná. So they have this song called Me Vale.
Sí.
And so I've always been that kid or that person nowadays adult, right? Where I just don't care. Like I don't care about a lot of things. I'm not huge into fashion. I'm not huge into any of that stuff. Like you guys will see me wearing like a little t-shirt, shorts, and like like some tennis shoes. And my family sometimes makes fun of me because just for the fun, or like you just don't care. I'm like I really don't. Like I have other priorities, right? And so I've always been that kind of person. And then when I went to Richfield, I remember that kids will call me a lot of things. They were a little bit mean. They would call me like whitewash or like wanna be white or stuff like that. In reality, it was not that. In reality, it's really sad because in reality, the only thing that I was trying to do is that I got good grades. I did good in classes overall. I got along with all kinds of people, all kinds of ethnicities. I've always been like that. I'm pretty open about my beliefs of what I believe, and in regards to like religion, sex, all kinds of things. And so I was a little bit different, and I've always been the same. Like I haven't changed throughout time where I'm like, oh, I was different during this stage of my life. Now I believe in this, which I'm okay with all that stuff, right? But in reality, I've always have my own identity, and I love that about myself because I think it's given me a lot of strength into being the person that I am now. And that has really helped me strive. So going back to like, for example, that math question and why I liked it, my father taught me the old Mexican way of how to learn math. At the right at intermediate, I knew how to do like really long divisions, multiplications. I know them by memory, and I knew them by memory at that point. Then it got to the point where I got into more like higher level at math, and then you start to notice that you're a little bit better at something, right? And so I started getting into it. I started learning about space. I started learning about physics. I started learning about a little bit of like algorithms, even though I didn't know what algorithms were at that point. And my biggest interest since I was a kid was medicine. I always wanted to be a some type of doctor, and so that kind of led me to why I wanted to do math. A lot of people were like, "Oh, but what about reading and that stuff?" I'm gonna be very realistic, and I hope that it doesn't. I hope it doesn't give people like the wrong idea. But I've never, till this point, I've never read a whole book, and it's not because I don't like reading, or it's just that I'm more into reading like magazines and stuff like that, like scientific magazines or like nature papers, stuff that give me like some knowledge. And I understand that there's some books, for example, my partner recently gave me a book called The Alchemist, and it has a interesting like first chapter, or and I had a good time starting reading it, and eventually I'm like, oof, like this is not really for me. This is not who I really am. And so I'm not a big reader. I'm also not I'm not really good at writing. So thank God for like Grammarly and all that stuff, right? Yeah. So I've always been like this. I love having my own identity. I really hope that a lot of Hispanics find their own identity, because sometimes we are suppressed into being forced into an identity that we're not. And so that's how I got to like a lot of the things that I like doing now. And so and maybe we can go on into what I do and what I like doing after, but I think it has translated now into some more advanced cool stuff. And so I'm really happy to like tell you guys about a lot of the stuff I do, for sure.
Let's kick it off.
I have an undergrad degree in science, but like I tried to do my research and read and get into like what you've been doing, and it's like we're gonna get technical, you're gonna get technical, but just like obviously you're good at what you do, you're good at what you study, so we're gonna try to keep along and try to keep it like be technical for everybody that wants to hear the technicalities, but then explain like in our terms of like what that means for the world, what that means. I'm sure you do this all the time.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I think you both are like science people. Like I'm more like not science, I guess. But I guess I'll moderate. You guys like be as technical as you two want. You guys like go ahead and talk. And if I don't understand something, or I feel like something needs more explaining, I'll step in. But you guys go ahead and talk. Take it over, Britt.
We're gonna try. Right before we get into the impressive technical stuff, talk to me about like your senior year of high school, applying to college, what you wanted to major in, how that process was for you. Obviously it's very unique being a DACA student. Just kind of give them like tips for those who are in that stage of their life that are entering the junior year, entering the senior year. We have a lot of high school students that listen to the podcast. So anything before we get into like the super post-college.
Yeah, definitely. So I feel like it's important to keep in mind that I'm going to be pretty real of who I was and what I was, just because I don't want to give this image of like, hey, like he's doing this now. I'm guessing he was like this in high school. I was a pretty quiet person in high school. The people that I went to high school with probably know this. I was quiet. I was not super into, like I said, any like fashion stuff or like any of that. I played soccer very little, like 2 years in high school, mostly because I had to start working with my parents. But I really only enjoyed math and science. Other than that, I kind of just, I'm gonna be very realistic. I just kind of went through, flew through my years. I don't remember much about my junior and senior because I just didn't care that much, and it's not because I didn't want to be there. I thought I was good at school, and it was just not something that was very important to me at the moment, I wanted to move on quickly to something great, like get opportunities in college, right? And I really didn't focus on the extra stuff. I never went to a prom. I never went to any of the school dances, and I just, it was not me. And I feel like sometimes, like I said, people are forced into a lot of those things, right? And yeah, applying to college was a little bit different for me. I remember applications were due like in 3 weeks. To this point, Mr. Michael Cunningham. So he was a high school teacher of mine. I took Avid, and so he was one of those people that was like, "Hey, are you gonna apply or not?" And I was like, "Oh, sure." So I started applying in schools. I got into like some schools. I ended up going somewhere in North Dakota for 2 years. That's where I started my undergrad career. Like any other person, most people are already told, like especially American kids, like, hey, you're gonna, by their parents, like, you're gonna start school. This is what I recommend because I've been through it. Total different case for me. My parents didn't know anything about college education. They didn't go to college or even high school. So what happened there was that I started, when I applied and I got in. I remember signing up for classes, and I think my first semester I took like 18 credits. Full. Some of them were like level 3 levels higher than what I should. I took a lot of classes that maybe I should have not taken together, and so I had a tough semester. Grades always good, just because that's something that I loved. I love being in lab. I love being in class. It was different, when you start school, and I'm sure you guys have experienced this before, is that you eventually get into the scenario where like people are different. They don't care about popular, not popular. Even though I did not care, having that weight taken out, you start noticing that people are different. People are cool, you're your true identity. You feel comfortable with everyone else, and you start making a lot of amazing friends. All my friends were international, some pretty cool people. I was never huge into like parties or any of that stuff, so I got to meet some cool people. I definitely started working really hard right away out of high school. Applying for school, difficult. You don't have a lot of money for applications. I started working 3 different jobs. So it got to the point where I was working 21 hours, 4 days of the week. And most of it was for college funding. And that doesn't mean that it was only me. My parents did the same thing. They worked their butts off to make sure that I had enough money. Keep in mind, at that moment, DACA was pretty new. The Minnesota DREAM Act was still not in place. So where are you gonna get $40,000 a year for school? It's hard, it's a lot of money. And so my dad was like, hey, like let's give it a try, and if you can, like, let's go back and let's rework this and let's go back to it. So it's pretty obvious that it's difficult for an immigrant compared to my friends who were there fully paid for the whole semester and they didn't have to worry about anything else, right? And so after that, I worked my butt off. Did really good those 2 semesters, those 2 years that I was there. Enjoyed. I think they were my favorite years of my young adult life, right? I moved on to the University of Minnesota, where I transferred over. I got a full ride there for both of my last 2 years, and I got to meet some amazing people. Let's keep in mind that this is a bigger university. Classes are a lot tougher. It's really intense. I got into the program of College of Biological Science. So first of all, it was really difficult getting in. Second of all, it was really difficult getting funding. And lastly, the classes were extremely hard. We're talking about chemistry, biology, mathematics, anything related to like the science engineering field was difficult. I went on through that. It was good. I had a good time. I met a lot of great people. I started getting a little bit into shadowing, lab rotations. That's where I got to work on my intuition, so my brain. That's where I started thinking about what I wanted to do next. I didn't want to, and it's different for everyone. If people want to do this much and this is where they want to end and they're happy with this, that's great. I love that. I respect that. That's respectful, because it's hard even getting to that point. For me, it's been different. I tell this to a lot of my friends and a lot of my people. I'm okay with people not believing in me and thinking that I'm crazy. Because that's who I am. My goals are extreme. My goals are, I like to call, I look at someone and they looked at me and they're like, so that's what you're trying to do? And I'm like, yeah, that's what I'm trying to do. That's, yeah, the odds are like bad, but I've gotten to this point, and getting to this point was already difficult. So why not go the full way? Where you can actually, like, show your whole potential. I think that my potential and the potential of every human being is just really to the top of the point. But we all decide where we want to end, right? Eventually, when I graduated college, due to my DACA status, licenses with medical school, a lot of the things that were going on at that point, I started studying for the MCAT.
Pause.
Yeah.
Okay, so like transitioning into like the U of M.
Yeah.
Like, one of the things that struck me was like, you're okay with people not believing in you, but one of the things that's admiring about you is that you bet on yourself, and I think it's a lesson for everybody, anybody listening to this podcast is like, there's always the only people that's gonna care about you 100% of what you do is yourself, right? So like obviously there's your parents supporting you and stuff like that, but like, and you have to kind of build a community, right? Like, people don't believe in you, like, just cut them off, or like, but the important thing is like, bet on yourself, because that's the best investment that you can make. And even if you don't like fail, even if you fail, the thing like you will always like thank yourself for is that you gave it a try. So I think that's something important that you brought up. But I guess one thing I wanted to ask was like, what did your parents think? Because like they didn't go to school, they didn't go to like the U of M, right? Like you're first generation student. Like, what do like maybe like what they were feeling, what people around you were saying? Like, I mean, not that it matters, but like, do you have any insight to provide on that?
Definitely, there was people. My parents, including my parents and my sisters, very supportive. They won. They've always loved my crazy goals. Family, not so supportive. They've always thought that I was gonna, and somewhere fail, move on, kind of that stuff. But getting that, I don't need much support. I've always thought like that, because I'm the one staying at 2 a.m. in a building, where there's maybe no light, studying, working my butt off till 2, 3, 4 a.m. And a lot of my friends, like my close friend Pablo, we're all know him. Shout out to Pablo, yeah, Gomez. He knows the type of work that including himself put in there, because that's just who I am. And my parents always pushed me that way. My parents clean houses for a living, and I used to go with them all the time. And my dad, when we used to clean windows or work at night in nightclubs, like golf clubs, but we used to work at night, he used to tell me like, is this what you want to do? And if this is what you want to do, like, great. But if this is not what you want to do, like, you have to figure something out, because this is difficult stuff. Waking up at 10 p.m. and going to work and then having to work again in the morning. It's a lot of work, And so I understood that at a really young age. I tell my father all the time, like, you might think that I'm not listening most of the time, but I'm catching everything that you're saying, even though I might not seem like I am. Because one of the reasons why I'm here to this point, it's definitely my parents' support. There's always that skepticism that you're not gonna do good, and I'm okay with that. I feed off that. I feed off negativity. As we know, we live in a weird world right now, where a lot of generations are run by also money, right? Money's huge right now in businesses, cryptocurrency, just a lot of going on around the world, right? And my father always tells me like, hey, like, I brought you here to for you to achieve your goals. I really hope that one of those goals is not being like super rich, because that's not and it's great being rich. I mean, money is great. I have a really good my partner's mother tells me all the time that money, we give respect to money. I give respect to money, but it's not something that dictates my life. And it has never have. To be realistic, the only reason I use money right now is to travel around, to travel in different states, go on hikes with my partner, enjoy my time with my family, and have a good time. I really don't do any more than that with money. I buy a few things there and there, but nothing really crazy. Um, and yeah, my father told me like it's great that that you want this, but make sure that you achieve your goals because money will come. If you're doing something that you love, money comes. And I've been seeing it every year. Every time I change a position or anything, I get more money offered. More money offered. Um I've turned down a lot of contracts already from big tech companies, and I'm really happy. I really don't care. Like again, but going back to that song of like Me Vale, like I really don't care about money, including like a lot of my close friends know that hey, it's not one of my priorities. One of my priorities, I don't know if you guys heard about this study where they talk about valedictorians. Valedictorians are great. They graduate number one in their class, they become doctors, they become lawyers, they become all these great things. But there was a study made where like a lot of these people never changed the world. And it got to me. I don't even know what ranking I graduated in high school, but I never cared. I never cared who got called for like the most likely to discover the cure to cancer. I didn't care. I knew that at that point. I told myself it's gonna be me. I don't care who they choose. Because it's just not something that I care about. To get the approval of anyone until that. Since then, and since I was a kid, I never really cared about the approval of anyone for anything that I do. Yeah. So just those little things where I always think about money's important. I respect money. I think it's great. And it's not something that it's one of my priorities. And I hope that a lot of Hispanic, because we come from countries where we lack of money, right?
Yeah.
And we come with like, oh, work your butt off, make money, buy this, buy that, like you'll be very surprised how I am very okay with not being a millionaire or any of that for sure. Yeah, and I hope it doesn't come off as like being lazy or being or being like I don't care, like or talking or talking about other people. I really respect anyone who goes that route too. It's okay.
Yeah, I think I want to say one thing about the valedictorian thing, and then go back to a snippet of college, and then move forward. So yeah, with the valedictorian, that really reminded me of a speech that a valedictorian gave. I don't know if you guys have ever seen the video. It's on YouTube. It went like super viral about he graduated valedictorian. He was gonna go give the speech, and his whole speech was basically like, I got this, and I like thought this was gonna be fulfilling and this was gonna be like the best thing ever, but like I gave up so much of my social life, like building relationships and things that really mattered, that this really wasn't at the end of the day important. Like this is what he thought the goal was gonna be, and I think that's like super cool. I mean, our school didn't really do valedictorians. We just got like a top 10%, I think it was. You got like a little
like tassel or something.
Little
like
tassel
that,
thing. I mean, well, we kind of knew who was around the rankings, but no, definitely wasn't number one. But the other thing I wanted to talk about, how you mentioned, you meet really cool people in college, and like you really like develop a different type of social life.
Yeah.
And I think that's super important to tell high school students now, is like a lot of high school students come into high school labeled as like a lazy worker, someone who doesn't like homework, and they kind of carry that identity and make that like their actions, because they're like, oh, I've always been labeled a class clown, so I can't love science. Oh, I've always been labeled like the person who sits in the back and doesn't do anything, so I can't love math. And like once you graduate high school and go to college, it's like high school is like you're kind of like forced to be at that school, and you're kind of forced to be with those people, and like it kind of becomes like this whole like survival of the fittest type of mentality thing, which can drive people like to do disgusting things, honestly. But then in college, it's like you're choosing to go to class, you're choosing which classes to go to, you're choosing your lab partners. If you don't really mess with the person across the room, then you never will have to talk to them ever in class. Like it is like, so you get to like build your own identity in college. You get to really explore who you want to be and what you enjoy doing. And like you can just leave high school behind, because like it
really never matters again. Yeah, I'm sorry, but that's what I told one of my great teachers, Corny Jackson, which I love. I went back to visit her one time and I was like, hey, it's crazy. Like going back in time, you're like, wow, like high school is like pretty, like I'm being really realistic. It's pretty fake.
Yeah.
It's a fake life. It's a fake society. And it's okay because it's a whole lot of young adults going through a different stage of their life where they're making that adult jump, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're finding their own identities, right? And so I spoke to her and I was like, it's when you get to college and you get to share a dorm with someone, that's when you start to notice like, oh, people are pretty cool, and people it's a moment to like restart like who you are, show who you really are, because at the end of the day you don't have to really fake or be someone different for someone else, right? Or to like for people to like you. Like, no, you're just you, and if people like you, great, and if they don't like you, I'm pretty cool with that too. So yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
And in college there's no like cool kids, because I'll see somebody and then I'll never see them again for the rest of the year, right? Like no idea who they are, no idea, like that you create your own group and like you guys go out to eat together, you go to the cafeteria, you go play in the gym, whatever the case may be. So like a lot of students ask me like, why should I go to college, and I tell them all these different things, but a big thing is like it's a huge great space to find yourself, and,
I agree,
and really like grow into yourself even, and especially like connection, and get to know those people that have those thoughts, like think like you, right? Like they have that same mindset, they have the same aspirations, and then you never know, right? You end up connecting with someone who's going to win the Nobel Peace Prize, and then it's just like, well, I know that guy, right? Because of college or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. Yeah. So yeah, just it's a different lifestyle. I love school. I love education. For people who don't go to college or don't choose that path, it's the same thing to me. I treat everyone exactly the same. I've always done. Even some of my classmates that I graduated with, I just don't. To me, it's all the same. Whoever wants to ask about my life, I'll let them know. Whoever doesn't care, I don't care either. That's what it is. But I agree. I wish everyone got a little bit of that taste of like what college life is, and to understand that, hey, there's a cool circle of people around that just they're like, again they're in that me vale stage where you just don't care. You get to be yourself.
Yeah. What were you gonna ask?
Well, I was gonna transition the conversation to let's talk about studying for the MCAT, and what kind of what you're doing. What are you up to now?
Yeah, so I started studying for the MCAT, and this was around 2015, and I had a really interesting situation because, again, I'm in this scenario where it's already hard to get into medical school, but there's only at that point very few schools that accept DACA people, medical license, tuition, just a lot of factors, right? I think at that point the only one was Loyola in Chicago. Is that correct? That was the only school that was accepting. And I remember at that point I went to talk to one of my physiology teachers. Her name is Delay Olson, Dr. Olson, amazing person too. And she would tell me like, oh, like, like what's going on? What's the plan? What are you planning on doing? And I was like, hey, like I love coding. That's something that I've always loved. Two of my roommates in North Dakota, they were computer science majors. One of them ended up being a PhD student here at the University of Minnesota for computer science, and another one is working at Google. So just super smart, two very smart individuals, and I kind of learned from them. I went on and I during my free time, I was coding. Just random applications, coding, creating my own my little games, my little own graphs, just everything I did, I tried to do it coding. It was just fun for me. I never really took a coding class at that point. And I told her, like, this is what's going on. And she was like, you would make a great engineer. It's something that if you like doing while you wait or while you're waiting for the situation to change, like it would be good to explore other options. That's when I started looking into computational biology. So I graduated with biology degree. That's my 4-year degree on. And I went on to, all right, I'll do it. I applied to 10 different schools. We're talking about, I always think, let's be very realistic, but I have we all have this thing where we think the best of ourselves. I like to compare myself to. I don't like to when I go out there. I don't like to compare myself with like with other people. But in this case, I believe very highly of myself. I applied John Hopkins, Stanford, UCLA, which is a school that I love. I love the West Coast. I love California. I applied to Berkeley, all the best computational biology programs, including Boston. Harvard, MIT. Because I thought very highly of myself. The last one that I applied to was the U of M, and Wisconsin. We have other schools that had really good programs. Within days, all these Ivy League schools denied me, and it was either I didn't fit the academic criteria, the I forgot the test, the GED, or no, not GED. That's for high school. What's that other one? It starts with a G.
GRE.
GRE, yeah. I did really good on the math. I did very poorly on the writing or the reading or whatever that portion is. Yeah, I really went in there without studying. Yeah. And the only school that really accepted me was the University of Minnesota for their computational biology degree PhD program, where Dr. DeLay Olson put a really good work for me. And so I went into the program. I took some really difficult, hard coding classes that really pushed me. Great professors, top in the U.S. and in the university, and that's where I found my advisor, lab, which I love my lab mates. I love my primary investigator. His name is Dr. Andrew Van Tiger. He is a neurosurgeon. So he has a double MD PhD. So he graduated with his medical degree, his PhD degree from Stanford. He went on to do some things at MIT and Harvard. So just a super smart individual. And he gave me the opportunity. I didn't go in there with the qualifications of students from Harvard or people that came from undergrad from those top schools. Mm-hmm. But he was I went to his office. We had a talk. And I was talking, now that I go back, I'm like, damn, what was I talking about? I was talking about things about automation, things about SpaceX, things that were not related to lab. But he told me that he saw something in me that he had not seen in other individuals. Mm-hmm. Things that he saw back when he was in his postdoc at MIT or Harvard, these kids that just go a little bit above their thoughts to crazy thoughts. So let's be realistic, right? And so he was like, I'll give you the chance. What do you think? You want to join lab? I was like, sure. So that's when I started working in his lab. So what we do, I'll talk a little bit about what we do in lab. So we study brain tumors. In this case, skull-based tumors that appear either they're more on the bone, so all the way to the spine. We study those tumors. He's the one who sometimes takes those tumors out. And what we do next generation sequencing. So we take the DNA of those tumors and we analyze them. We see similar differences between a normal tissue and a tumor, right? And so that's my PhD. That's what I do. Right now I'm working with mouse models. So I'm trying to, my main goal for this project or my PhD, and I think it's really important for people to know because I don't come from a background where this is what I was gonna do. Mm-hmm. I want to connect the mouse genome to the human tumor genome and find the development of a specific cancer, in this case skull-based tumors. And so that's huge because not many people get that opportunity to make a connection between two different species and come up with an answer where the origin of cancer, that's the huge question right now in science. Mm-hmm. What's the origin of cancer? And that's one of my focus. People are that's too broad. You want to basically cure cancer. That's the big question. I'm isn't that the whole point? Yeah. Why would you go into science and just be I just want to focus on this specific gene? No, I want to focus on curing what's killing millions of people around the world, right? Mm-hmm. That's my main goal. And so people get this idea over okay, the origin of cancer. What are you gonna do? I'm I have a plan. I'm working with mouse models. We use technology that is really, really, really difficult to get our hands on. Mm-hmm. And like I said, next generation sequencing. We do it for a lot of tumors. We have mouse models. We have people in lab that do that. we get really in depth to understanding histones of the DNA of the genome, DNA, RNA. So we do a lot of crazy stuff that people don't really seem to understand. Including when I started in lab, I didn't understand myself. I've always also loved IT, so information technology. I was always the guy at home that fix this, fix that, right? But again, I thought to myself, I gotta take this to another level. I can't stay in that same position where all I know is how to change a hard drive or how to operate a computer, right? I know how to use like coding and everything. So that's when I started working for IT as well. And at the same time when I was an undergrad, I moved on to a computer tech. And then this last year, I got a position as a DevOps engineer at the Minnesota Supercomputing Institute. And so I work in a really difficult project right now called LORIS. It's really public. It's part of the Masonic Clinic at the University of Minnesota. And so what we do here is that one of my position, or one of we're only 2 DevOps engineers here. What we do, Linux engineers, what we do is that we maintain this brain. So this brain is associated with 32 institutions around the US and Canada. And one of my duties is to code, maintain it, focus on security. What it's going to do is that any researcher will be able to input data into it, extract data out of it. But we're working with, like, if you guys ever get the opportunity to visit the Minnesota Supercomputing Institute at the university, the basement under Walter Library, it's full of what's called clusters. So it's a bunch of hard drives, a bunch of RAM, and so they're clusters. It's like those data centers, right? And I'm one of the main engineers there, where I get to work with a lot of this data and a lot of this coding. So I'm not DevOps, means developer and operational. So I can also go downstairs and do a lot of the fixing there. And I have a pretty important job. And so going back to that question where, like, money, how important is money? Like, once you get one of those positions, money starts to come in. Like, you start seeing difference, and I still don't care. And it's not that I don't care about money, because I need money to survive. I need money to go out there, but it's not one of my priorities. I love doing what I do, what I do every day. You'll always see me with my computer coding everywhere. If it's not for work, it's for lab. And yeah, I log into what's called a node. A node is like an interface where you do a lot of like line coding. I don't know if you guys seen, my partner makes fun of me because a lot of those times when I'm doing it in a coffee shop or something, it looks like I'm hacking something because it's a bunch of lines of code and a bunch of like back and forth. And that's what I do. I'm able to understand a lot of these structures in very good detail. And it's something that I just love doing. And people tell me, okay, what's next? Like, you have a good job, a really good job. A lot of people with a PhD would stop right there, because that's already a PhD job. Like, I'm the only one without a PhD at my job. It's just that I have a really good knowledge of how that works. And I tell them, I want to do space medicine. I want to take this to another level. I want to join NASA at some point. And people are like, whoa, I want to win a Nobel Prize. I'm really close. I tell everyone, I'm really close. Like, you won't believe me, but when I'm there in my computer at 4 a.m. studying and seeing genes and seeing things in a tumor and being able to like transform it, move it around and see things that people don't see with me, then you start to like get this insight of like, whoa, I have my hands under something that is really huge that people are not able to see, but only myself. I mean, they do get that opportunity. It's just that that's maybe not something of their interest. But I'm like, I can take this really far. If I can control a supercomputer, one of the biggest supercomputers in the United States, I can control other stuff that is pretty huge. And I want to be like one of my best mentors, again, my advisor, Dr. Andrew Van Tiger, who's a medical surgeon, neurosurgeon here at the U, the director of the school-based surgery program here. He makes it look easy. He works his butt off. It's true. You don't sleep. You lack of food. You lack of water. Coffee is your best friend, and it's true. You don't see your family that much, your partner that much. So you give up on a lot of things. But if you have people that support you and that are there for you, take advantage of that, because that's when you start to see who's there, who's not there. And I tell people space medicine. I start taking engineering classes pretty soon, more like into the aerospace engineering. I already signed up for my in-flight program, so I want to learn how to fly a plane, and I have an idea physics-wise, like how things work, and it's just those little steps that you have to take. I don't tell many people about this, but it's something that I've always loved, and I've come up with a lot of situations where people tell me about money, like if you don't talk to me about money, like we can't move forward with a friendship, with this, because money is important. Like I want to go to Cancun, I want to go to Norway, I want to go to these places, and I need money. And it's like, for me, it's like I can still do those things and enjoy what I love doing. Yeah, you'll see me with my computer coding at 4 a.m., but I still love doing what I do. And yeah, I do some pretty cool stuff. I really hope people take a look into, like, hey, no dream is little dream. Like, it takes hard work, and it's true. It's difficult stuff. You lack of sleep, like I said. Yeah. My family makes fun of me all the time, because I'm always like looking like a zombie. I came driving here kind of like off, Yeah. But when you enjoy doing something, and when you come with a story where your parents had to cross the border for you to have a better life. Let's be realistic. We're given everything in our hands. I am a DACA recipient, but to be real, I've seen that as an advantage. When people don't believe in me, I feed off it, for real. Now we get a lot of situations where I've been invited now to Stanford, to UCLA, to Dartmouth, to Johns Hopkins to give talks. There's labs over there that are already asking for me when I finish my PhD, where I plan to do my postdoc, or where I would want to go to medical school to do my medical degree. And to be realistic, I don't tell anyone this, because I'm like, at the end of the day, I'm going to choose. And I do have this little thing where, like, I'm like, all of you really denied me when I wasn't doing something cool. But now that I'm publishing, now that you're hearing my name very often, now that you're seeing me in this or this other thing, or now that my advisors are constantly talking about me, now that you're seeing more about me, that I'm doing things that your postdocs, that your people can't do. You want me? I get it. It's cool. Like, I understand that that's part of life, right? But you do get a little bit advantage in there. You do get that little thing where you're like, okay, now you're deciding. Yeah. And so, yeah, I to everyone that listens to this podcast, and I hope that people understand, it's like, just do the whole thing of me vale. Stop caring what people think about you. If you want to dream big and you feel like don't be scared of it, do it. And if it doesn't work, move on to another thing that you like doing. Stop worrying about what people, even including family members that don't support you, move on. You don't completely have to chop them off, because at the end of the day, when you're standing, like you said, right? One of my biggest goals will be getting a Nobel Prize. That's for me. I'm shooting for it. I'm going for it, right? And people are like, Nobel Prize? Like, no. The last person that one of the biggest people that got a Nobel Prize, for example, was a person that understood how water would travel inside a cell. It's just those little things. It's like, I can get a Nobel Prize. I mean, if you people are like, no. Like, I'm like watch me. Like, I'm sorry, watch me. You'll see it, and you'll be like, shoot. Like, And at the end of the day, I'm not trying to prove you wrong. I'm trying to put myself right. Yeah. Right? So just those little things. I like I said, I other than that, I started to get away from, like, the whole, because it's a lot of stress. It's a lot of stress. I have a full-time work, right? I have a full-time to go to school, and then I have full-time lab. I have to do rotations. Just a lot of things going on in my life. There's times where I sleep nothing. There's times where I sleep 3 hours. The max I get is like 4 sometimes. It's just constantly always working. My brain's always working. But I still do things that I love doing. Marathon running. So I'm going to be running Medtronic. And then people are like, oh, isn't that just another thing? It's like, no, it's not. It's like something that I want to do now. People are like, how far do you want to get at that point? I'm like, I want to make Boston. I want to make it. I want I want to make it at some point to the Boston Marathon, where you have to hit like a really hard time, like to per mile. And I'm like, and they're like, no, but you haven't trained. Like most of these people are like people who train since high school. I'm like, so like, I'm gonna do it. Watch me. I've done things that are way more difficult than a marathon running and making it to Boston. Watch me do it. And then they laugh, and it's like, and it's no, I dedicate myself. I wake up every morning at 4 a.m., 5 a.m., 6 a.m., whatever time I get to wake up. I put my miles in. I get in there and take care of my nutrition, and that's about it. So I run October 2nd, my marathon. I'm trying to hit Boston, and once I hit Boston, move on to the next thing, finish my goals, get there. It's just stuff that I love doing. I love doing this. Mm-hmm. People don't have to it's not me trying to prove someone wrong. Mm-hmm. I just love doing this. It's pleasure for myself and only for me. Mm-hmm. And my parents are proud of that stuff. My partner, my family, my close friends are proud of this. And at the end of the day, again, I'm doing it for myself, no one else. And I hope if people, especially Hispanics, where you have to do it for someone, or you have to do it for your parents, or you have to do it for this, start doing things for yourself. We come from an ethnicity, or we come from a culture where we have to respect our parents, right? We're with always. If you keep that respect with your parents, you will get really far, because our parents have been through things that we haven't been through. Like a marathon is nothing compared to my dad picking up garbage at the age of 5. Marathon or going to NASA is nothing compared to my father coming to the United States and building his own business. That's difficult stuff. Have you guys ever heard ever read the movie of ever read the book of Alfredo Quiñones? So he was Alfredo Quiñones. It's his life story. So he's one of the top neurosurgeons here in the United States. He a good friend of mine gave me his book. And he has a pretty similar story to a lot of us. He came really young, picked up tomatoes in California. See, I'm sure very similar to where my dad was picking up tomatoes. And he ended up being the top neurosurgeon at Johns Hopkins. Currently works at Mayo. He's number 1 or 2 in the whole world in neurosurgeon. Mexican. Both parents are Mexican. Still goes to Mexico from Tijuana. Just let's be realistic. A pretty badass human being.
Is he your hero?
He's one of my heroes, definitely. Yeah. Apart from my father, definitely Alfredo Quiñones. Just he proved that he can do it all, and that we can all do it all. And find yourself a hero. Find someone that you love, or someone that you like, and follow a little bit of their footsteps, because part of it is also being humble and understanding that there's people that know more than you. If you're able to learn from other human beings, you'll get really far. But if you get into this thing where I can do it all, I don't need nobody, you'll hit hard stops pretty soon, and then things start going downhill, right? Yeah. So just those little things. I hope people listen to this and they're I can actually get really far, or maybe something that I didn't want to do, I want to do it now, right? So just just a quick glimpse of what I do.
Yeah, and a reminder that Jesus is 27.
27, yeah.
27 years old. Just let that sink in right there. 27 years old. Already in PhD program.
Yeah, finishing my last 2 years of my PhD.
Last 2 years. Worked with the supercomputers. And going to go off to be surgeon, astronaut, Nobel Peace Prize winner, and now you're already a biologist. You're gonna go into computational biology as well. Is that what?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So right, that. I have to take a moment to just kind of
Yeah, I want to make sure that we go back to First in Line, right? First in Line podcast. Let's say season 20, right? And then things are gonna be a little bit different at that point, right? Yeah. That's one of my goals, where I come back and I'm like, hey, now let's talk about how I got into NASA. If people get that mentality, they'll get pretty far. So just those little things, Yeah. So pretty happy with what you guys are doing. That's pretty sick. Let's be realistic. This is something that you don't see every day. It takes time. Set up the whole thing, making sure that you guys are all here on time, and like I have to be here on time, making sure that everyone's here. It takes, and putting the stories out there. That's pretty cool. I hope that more people join the podcast with different stories here as well. I'll be looking. I'll be sharing. I'll be making sure that everyone sees this because you guys are gonna be pretty. If you guys keep in mind that a lot of the podcasts that are out there, like for example Joe Rogan, with a lot of the things that he puts out, which I'm not a huge fan of Joe Rogan, but it's just podcasts that he shows famous people and people that are a little bit like different. But at the end of the day, the ones that are changing America are immigrants. We're the ones that are making the real change. And so having a podcast where it shows how immigrants got here and that we do also have big dreams, it's going to show it's going to really show who is really changing America. So pretty dope. Congratulations to all of you. That's pretty cool.
One thing I want to like talk about, maybe like you can help me. Like for me, I always had like a continuous improvement mindset, but lately, I don't know. I feel like, because I'm 27, I feel like I'm like stuck. Like it's like now what? It's like maybe I'm getting comfortable. I don't know what it is. But like that like me vale attitude. That you said, and it feels like you had you've had that mentality, or since you were like very young, right? Like 7. So it's like maybe like for those listening out there, right, who like maybe struggle with that, or like or like kind of like, hey, I care about what X, Y, and Z think, or I care too much about what people think of me, or how do you evolve from that to kind of like be a little bit more like valiant, to be like me vale, like kind of have that mentality.
Yeah, definitely. You have to find things that you like. So that's one of the reasons for the marathon. You have to find things that push you, that keep you going. You said something really important: comfort, right? Comfort. If you guys ever want to go visit, my office is in Walter Library at the University of Minnesota, room 561. I've only been to that office once. People there have their offices, and I tell this to my partner all the time. And people have their offices. She's been to my office, and my office has nothing in it. And people tell me like, why? Like, put a plant. My partner wants to bring plants over, and she wants to like decorate it. When I go to meetings, sometimes I go to my other coworkers' offices, and they're like, computer, this, plants, and this. But I'm going to be very realistic. I don't plan to be there for very long. My goals are way bigger than where I am right now. So there's no reason for me to put a comfortable chair. There's no reason for me to get a different computer there. There's no reason for me to have a flower there because it's going to die. Right? And if I do once you start getting comfortable setting up a place somewhere, that's when things start to change, because now you're settled. And it's okay to be settled if that's what that person wants. But if that's not what you want, you'll be there. So if I start bringing stuff to my office, I'll be there for the next 10 years. 15 years will pass by, and then that's it. You just become really comfortable. I see people getting comfortable at work all the time, and it's okay. Like, cool, that's dope. But I think that's really important with anyone. It's okay to like I'm not telling people don't decorate your offices, right? Yeah. But yeah, feel free to go. Like my partner laughs all the time. I have nothing. Like I literally just have an office as a. To be realistic, sometimes I do stop there to eat my lunch because I'm running around the university doing some other stuff. I don't like working in my office. I don't like feeling comfortable. It's just one of my rules that I have every day. Yeah. So yeah, I hope that answers that question. It's yeah. That's it. Yeah, cool.
Yeah. We're getting to the top of the hour. I feel like we just have so much more we could talk about, and like you said, we're definitely gonna want to invite you back, and
thank you.
A few episodes from now, a few seasons maybe even from now, to talk about where you've been and to hear about. Are you going to Maui? You're going to Maui, or you've been to Maui?
I've been to Kauai. So with my partner, we went on a vacation trip. Like I said, we do some crazy hikes where I'm thankful that I'm here. But I'm going to be presenting in Maui this December,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's gonna be another nice trip to present. A lot of presentations are coming up. Like I said, now that I'm building something, I think I'm getting invited for presentations more often, and so I'm hoping that you guys will hear a little bit more in the future, and I'm excited. Yeah.
Yeah, we're super excited. We're huge fans. Ever since
Thank you.
connecting with Pablo, like he's talked about you all the time, and it's just like when we first started the podcast, I was just thinking of like, okay, who do I know? Who can I contact? Blah blah blah. And then it was like, hold on, like there's this guy that Pablo's been talking about that every time we talk about it, whether we're moving stuff into my new apartment or going to play soccer, like I'm like, this guy, I need to talk to this guy, you know, like I just need to talk to him. And Pablo's told me like, you need to talk to this guy before we even had a podcast. Like, you need to talk to Jesus. And I'm just like super thankful that we've had this opportunity. And
oh, thank you. You guys are amazing. I really appreciate it, and I hope that we can collaborate and come together again at some point for other stuff for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Obviously, very impressive. Great. Like how you do everything you do is something that I bow down to. You know, it's incredible for me. So definitely like take those kudos. And yeah, last thing, anything you want to say to the camera? Anybody you want to shout out? Anything you want people to look out for? How can people connect with you? Camera's yours. Whatever.
Feel free to connect anywhere. Instagram, Facebook, whatever you want. Email too. You know, sounds a little bit old school, but email. If you ever want to hear more about what I do and want to connect, and I'm also open to help anyone join my field at any point. Thank you so much. I really hope I get invited again. This was really fun, and I hope next time that if I do get invited, I bring some other cool stories to you guys. I want to be able to contribute a lot of things to talk about. Also like politics, religion, some other cool stuff that I'm into, and that I really want to be able to express my voices there. A lot of people don't talk about this because it's a topic that is really delicate. Yeah. But I think in the Hispanic immigrant community, I think it's also something to touch. It's something good to touch base on.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
Thank you for the opportunity. Really cool. Hope you guys are gonna be pretty huge. So I really appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, we appreciate you being here. Thank you guys for listening to the First in Line podcast. Again, hopefully we bring back as Dr. Garcia Garcia.
At some point, hopefully,
And we'll keep kicking it off. Thank you guys for tuning in. Any comments, leave down below for Nelson, for the team here. Your congrats, your good lucks to Jesus down in the comments as well. Give a like, subscribe, and we'll be back with another episode soon. Thank you again.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. It's a wrap.